A lot of people will look at a gacha game, and regardless of how much fun it looks to play, or how interesting its story seems to be, they will not play it based solely on the fact that it's a gacha game. They either think the model is predatory, or just think it's stupid and don't want to pay that much money. Regardless, getting a gacha game to some people is impossible. A lot of people will look at a gacha game like Zenless Zone Zero or Genshin Impact and go, I would play this if it were an actual game. Well, if you're that kind of person, Square Enix's Team Asano is looking you dead in the eyes and calling your bluff, because they've released Octopath Zero, a game that takes Octopath's gacha game, Champions of the Continent, and reworks it into a traditional JRPG experience. And the result is an experience that is so well polished and so enjoyable, it's almost impossible to tell this wasn't made from the ground up to be what it is. They do an amazing job transporting the gacha game into a traditional release. And I wanted to talk about it because I blinked and suddenly I had 85 hours in this game. But before we get into it, I would like to ask you all to please like, comment, and subscribe. I know asking for that before a video even begins is really tacky, so I'm not asking, I'm threatening. If you don't like, comment, and subscribe, I'm going to break into your house and open up every single carbonated beverage in your house so that they all go flat by the time you actually want to drink them.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Octopath Zero follows the tale of the Ring Bearer, the player's silent protagonist self-insert who has the canonical name of Zero, showing that this game goes to the Dragon Quest school of naming conventions. As their title suggests, the Ring Bearer is the chosen one of a magical ring called the Ring of the Flamebringer, an object with an incredible amount of magical power. So coveted is this ring that the Ring Bearer's hometown of Wishvale is burned to the ground by people trying to find it. And this leads into the first story of the game, with the Ring Bearer escaping only with their childhood friend Stia and wanting to rebuild the ruins of their town. I say first story because this is an Octopath game. For those unaware, the whole shtick of the Octopath series is there isn't one narrative, but 8 different ones that kind of come together in the end. So, in keeping with that tradition, Octopath Zero does not have one continuous narrative. It has the plan to rebuild Wishvale, which is a background element for a lot of the game, and then 3 stories that the player can choose from to start right away, then 1 long story, and then 3 more stories to choose from before ending on the final story. And it's this diversity that makes Octopath so much fun. One minute you're trying to rebuild your town by finding lost friends who might have survived, and then the next minute you're helping a mafia man overthrow a billionaire. And the next you're fighting against a twisted playwright who uses murder as inspiration for his stories, and then the next minute you're seeing whatever horrors Velnort's going through. It really keeps the game fresh at every moment. All 9 of Octopath Zero's stories are very well done. A lot of them have great characters, memorable moments, and some plot twists that genuinely caught me off guard. They were all a delight to experience, and the Ring Bearer being a silent protagonist who can't really have much of a personal input on the story doesn't hurt as much as you would think, because the Ring Bearer, very smartly, takes a sort of Monkey D. Luffy, Sonic the Hedgehog-esque approach of being the main character. They aren't really the main character in the stories they come across. They're something else that they just happen to walk into, and because of who they are, they help and intervene in someone else's story. For example, with the first 3 stories, the Taito storyline, despite him being the one who burned Wishvale to the ground, is very clearly Velnort's story. Herminia the Covetous Witch is very clearly Bargello's story. And the story of August, the playwright, is very clearly Schwartz's story. The ring bearer themselves aren't that interesting, but it's why the people around them want their help and what they do with it that makes for very interesting narratives. And honestly, even in the Wishvale story that's the most about them, it still feels like it's a lot more about Stia's story, which is great because that woman is your wife and making her happy should be the driving force behind why you want to do the Wishvale story. I do not care if you are a gay man or a straight woman, that is your wife and you want to make her happy. And though the narratives are treated as separate in the game itself, they do have a connecting thread to them that pays off really well in the final story. As throughout the game, the ring bearer is tasked with finding the secret rings. A bunch of powerful artifacts, much like their own ring, and you find them at the end of every story. But it doesn't take away from how strong the original arcs are. They don't have to bend over backwards to fit in the grand narrative, because the only requirement is that the main villain has a ring. So it's very easy to work that in, while not taking away from what makes each individual story work. I love all of them, but if I had to pick a favorite, it would be the final story. It takes a lot of twists and turns, and has a lot of cool concepts that I really think makes it all pay off. By the time you get to the final story, you've already put 70 plus hours into the game, so if they didn't stick the landing, it could definitely feel like a slog at that point, but they saved the best for last. It is definitely an amazing ending to the game. In particular, the true main villain is fantastic. They're a good twist, and they're very interesting to learn about after the fact. When they're first revealed to be the main villain, you're like, what the fuck's going on? But once they show their backstory, you immediately understand why this person is evil, and you almost think that they're in the right. Almost. I could go on, but I would really just be talking in circles. The stories of Octopath Zero are fantastic. They made me laugh, they made me cry, they made me feel every range of emotion you can feel. This is just more amazing Octopath writing, which is something that the series has, in my opinion, always done really well. If there was one aspect of Octopath Zero's writing I did have to complain about, it would be that there aren't any silly stories in it. What I mean by this is in Octopath 1 and 2, you would have a very serious story like Oswald's, which is about taking revenge on the man who murdered your wife and daughter, and about what happens when science is unchecked by empathy. But in that very same game, you would have the story of Agnia, the woman who just goes out and dances and shows the world that maybe, just maybe, there's a song and love in us all. And this isn't a knock on Agnia for being simpler. Her story gels well with all the serious stories in the game, and she's meant to sort of be a reprieve from it all. Octopath Zero doesn't have an Agnia or a Tressa or an Ochette. They're all very serious stories. They're all good stories, but in my opinion, part of the strength of Octopath Traveler was how there were these tonal shifts. But that's not really what Octopath Zero is going for, so this is more so just my personal opinion. I definitely think the game could have used one of those kind of stories, but I will respect that it doesn't have one, and it does really well with the dramatic stories that it has. If you're the kind of person that plays their JRPGs for the story more than anything else, you will not be disappointed here. And, as a garnish on top of everything, the voice work, at least for the English cast, I only played it in English, is amazing. There are multiple great performances throughout the entire game, especially Velnort, who when that guy screams in agony, you get goosebumps. And the villain August is also a standout, being this overdramatic, marvelous playwright who is just amazing when he needs to be intimidating, when he needs to be funny, when he needs to be bored. All of it works so well. Though, admittedly, it's not always perfect. Whenever they need to voice a major character, the voice work is sublime. But whenever they need to voice generic army guard number 3, it definitely feels like they just grabbed one of the programmers and asked him to speak. I'll put it to you this way. If a character having bad voice acting would genuinely make the story worse, they don't have bad voice acting. But if it's someone that only has 2 lines, it might be a little lackluster. But, okay, I've talked a lot about the story and writing, but what about the game part of the video game? Well, Octopath has one of my favorite systems in any turn-based RPG. The way that Octopath's gameplay works is it asks the question, what if Final Fantasy V specifically got an entire franchise based on its gameplay? Octopath Zero is a job-based JRPG, where there are 8 different jobs, each with their own collection of weapons and abilities that are used in combat. This diversity is amplified by the game's weakness mechanic. Every enemy has a set amount of weapons or elements that they are weak to, and they have a set shield number. When you hit them with attacks that they're weak to, you will eventually break their shield. For example, if an enemy has a 5 and you hit them with their weakness 5 times, they break. A broken enemy loses its next turn and becomes more vulnerable to damage. For regular encounters, this typically won't mean too much, but where this game shines is bosses. Bosses with this break mechanic are a ton of fun because of how well it works with Octopath Traveler's other mechanic, the boost mechanic. At the end of every turn, your characters get a boost point, and you can spend up to 3 of them to attack that many more times. Or, if you're using an attack that doesn't attack multiple times, boosting will just increase its damage, or for support skills, how many turns the buffs are on, etc, etc. The break and boost mechanics combine incredibly well on boss battles, because if you spend all of your boost points to attack an enemy 4 times with their weakness to break their shield, good job, you've broken their shield. But you spent all your boost points, so you don't have the ability to do a lot of damage to take advantage of that. And therein lies the game. Every turn, you have to think to yourself, is it worth boosting defensively just to break their shields and rob them of their next attack? Or do I want to keep eating shit for a few more turns and break them when I can go all out? And have I constructed my party with enough diversity in jobs and weapons that I can take advantage of this boss's weakness? It's a lot to think about, and every boss feels like an excellent chess match, where you are waiting for the boss to make one wrong move, for them to do that one attack that they have that you're not too scared of, which will give you an opening to punish them. It is a truly amazing system, and it's at its best when you are under-leveled. Octopath Traveler has a recommended level for every individual side quest, every area, optional or not, and some of the most fun I've ever had in a JRPG is going into a boss fight that I am 10 levels under-leveled for and trying to make it work with the tools that I have. I strongly recommend doing that at least once because it is incredibly fun to beat a boss you have no right beating. But in order to fight in a battle, you need dudes to fight with. And the way that you get your party members in this game are very well done. This is where it being a gacha game shows, because normally you would just pull for these characters in the gacha, but instead you find them all around the world, Every time you go into a new town, there's usually going to be a quest saying you'll have an encounter here, and then you'll have a little quest where you'll get a new party member. Sometimes it's as easy as just talking to them when you find them, and other times you gotta work for it. This fits the Octopath style of gameplay wonderfully, because it gives you a reason to explore the world, trying to find people not only to rebuild Wishvale, which is one of the predominant quest lines throughout the game, but also every new town is an opportunity to find a new character to use. And Octopath Zero lets you field 8 at once, 4 people in the front and 4 people in the back. And you can freely swap between a set of 2 that you make, so you can combine any kind of front line and back line for a lot of strategies. The general distribution of units in this game are every class has a representative of 3 characters, with the ring bearer being able to choose any of the 8 classes, for a total of potential 4 characters for every class. And the way that they work is unique to each character. I'll bring up merchants as an example. The merchant Ludo's shtick is he's the item guy. He has a passive that increases the item drop rate from enemies, and he has a lot of skills centered around the spear. Another merchant is Tressa, returning from Octopath 1, and her shtick is money. She has a passive skill that causes more money to drop from enemies, and an ability that forces an enemy to give you money. In fact, when used on bosses, you can rob them blind.
You're ugly, you're disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
And she has some skills based around supporting by healing herself or giving boost points to allies. And lastly, there's Corinda. Her shtick is being built for support, getting a lot of natural bulk and having skills that can heal an ally that's in the back row behind her and buffing all allies' physical strength. So even though all 3 of them use lances and bows and have the same class, they all play completely differently. And this is true throughout all 8 of the game's classes, not to mention all the units you get late in the game that are their own unique class that doesn't really get defined by any one archetype. Team building in this game is incredibly fun. Finding the combination of units whose stats, weapon diversity, and skills all mesh together in ways that you like is incredibly satisfying once you make a broken as shit team. There are some nutty combinations that you can do. For example, the Dancer Saoirse's ultimate ability is that for a few turns, every attack will break an enemy's shield. So you use that in conjunction with a character like Hanet, who has a 5 to 8 hit bow attack, and suddenly you are melting bosses' shields like nobody's business. There are a ton of interactions like that, and finding the right combination is very satisfying once it finally gets pulled off. And once a character has learned all the skills they can use, they get the ability to master that skill, turning it into an equipable item that you can give to other characters. A maximum of 3 active and 2 passive skills can be equipped to everyone this way. And this makes the customization even crazier. Granted, not every skill can be passed down. Some abilities are locked to a specific character so that they don't lose the niche that they have with it, but there is still a ton more creativity you can do with this. You could give a character that doesn't have a lot of multi-hit moves some multi-hit moves to help break shields, or you can give a character that can break shields easily but doesn't have a big damage move a big damage move. There's a lot of things you can do with this. The customization for your characters is insane, but that's also kind of part of the problem. Having 8 active party members and over 30 playable characters does come with some drawbacks. Because on the surface, Octopath Zero's shtick isn't that insane. You have 8 characters on the battlefield at once, with 1 job each, for a total of 8 jobs at your command. In Octopath 1 and 2, while you only had 4 fighters at once, they could all get secondary jobs, giving you access to 8 jobs in any one fight. And it's not even a matter of 4 people being less people than 8. Bosses in Zero will do enough damage that you'll be cycling through your front and back line. The problem is with boost points. In Octopath 1 and 2, you had to make sure that your boost points were well managed. I talked about that earlier. And in Zero, it's a bit easier to do, because you can break a boss with one character's full boost, and then punish them with another character's full boost. Now, granted, that is a dream scenario, and in the heat of fighting a boss, you might not be able to pull that off every time, but BP management was the best part of Octopath's battle system, and it's much easier to do in Zero, and that leads to a lot of bosses in this game being much easier than Octopath 1 and 2. For example, not to spoil who it is, but I beat the super secret true final boss on my first try. That should not happen in an Octopath game. That motherfucker should kick my ass 17 times. But at the same time, it being a little easier might just be because I'm familiar with this series, so I knew what I was doing. I'm wondering how easy BP manipulation and the gameplay is to someone that hasn't played an Octopath game before. If you've played it and this is your first one, let me know if you thought the game was a little easy. I actually really want to hear it. But beyond the gameplay, the 30+ playable characters run into another problem, and that's with story and writing. Before, Octopath had 8 party members, there were 8 stories, all 16 of Octopath's main characters felt wonderfully fleshed out and interesting. But in Zero, almost all of your party members do not have anything to do with the story. They're just the people you found along your journey. While that keeps it diverse and fresh, they don't get to be as fleshed out as you might like. They'll have their one quest when you recruit them, which sometimes isn't even a quest, it's just talking to them. And then later on in the game, they might have one more quest to help flesh out their character, and that's it. Obviously, the amount of writing a character gets does not dictate how well written they are. A character can be around for 300 pages of a book, but someone who's only been in there for 20 can be much better than them if they use the time they have well. But that does have a limit, in my opinion. The Octopath Zero unique characters just aren't around long enough to really be the greatest. That is not to say that they're bad at all. There are a lot of characters that do make good use of the short time that they have. Like Zerk, for example, is one of my favorite characters in the game. He's funny, he's heartfelt, they even managed to give him a romantic subplot somehow in the limited screen time that he has. He's great. I just wish every character could be as fleshed out as the likes of Throne or Primrose, but that might be a little unfair to what this game's trying to do. Now, the characters do have a bit more writing with party chats. Basically, Dragon Quest's party chat or Tales of skits, where they're just kinda talking back at Wishvale, shooting the shit, nothing really serious happening, but letting you see their personalities flesh out a bit more. These are fine, but my main problem is almost all of them happen in Wishvale. The characters never have a party chat about what's going on in the story, it's just when they get back to town and are relaxing. Which is great, there are a lot of really good party chats there. Again, Zerk is absolutely hilarious. But I wish they could have had an input on the main story more. And I know they would be really good for that, because they do that, but only in the final dungeon. When you're playing through the game's last challenge, there are party chats about the story that every character has at least one that they're in. and they have some of my favorite moments in the entire game for these characters, and it goes to show that if they did that more often, that would have been incredible. But that's also 30 characters to write for, and trying to get 30 characters to matter in a story can lead it to being very convoluted. There's a reason that Fire Emblem doesn't try to make every single character relevant to the story. I don't know, I just feel like the characters could have done more, but maybe I'm just being a greedy bastard, and I should be satisfied with what they are. Because there are no bad characters in this game, in my opinion. All of them are very enjoyable, new and old ones alike. Speaking of old ones, this could be a problem for a lot of people. The returning cast from Octopath 1 should not be here logically from a story sense. None of these 8 characters should be on this quest to save the world before they're on a quest in Octopath 1. Them being on this journey kinda fucks with a lot of their character arcs in that game, but I'm personally willing to ignore it as fan service. They're just there because a lot of people like Primrose and Therian and Alphen, and they just want them back. So honestly, I'm willing to just ignore the implications of them being here, because I don't think you are supposed to take it that seriously. And this is the last nitpick I have. With 30 different characters and all these skills you can learn, they kind of force you to take one skill in particular. All of your damage dealers are going to want to learn the passive skill from Ulbrich that lets them damage past the 9999 damage cap. That's basically required to fight a lot of the late game bosses, so your creativity is a little stunted, but honestly if they gave you 3 passives, that would be even more broken than it already is, so I kinda get why they did that. It just feels a little bad to have 8 characters in my lineup with the exact same skill. Also, I feel bad forcing Ulbrich to give this skill out over and over and over again.
What is my purpose?
You make surpassing power.
Cursed witchery.
But an RPG's gameplay is more than just battles. It's also exploring the world and talking to its people. And Octopath Zero does a really good job of that. As you explore the continent of Orstera, you will encounter many NPCs, and almost every single one that you can talk to will yield you a huge benefit depending on how you interact with them. You could inquire more information about them, giving some flavor text about the character or town that's either good world building or just a funny joke. And doing this can lead to discovering secret items or increasing the variety available at the town's shops. You could also get items from these NPCs, either by entreating them from them for free with a % chance to fail, or just buying from them outright with a chance to haggle for a lower price. And lastly, you can recruit them to your side, either as special one-off attacks in battle, or by having them come to Wishvale and giving you some kind of benefit there, either giving you a supply of building items, giving you battle items, healing items, just money, etc, etc. There's a lot of things an NPC can do. And when I say almost every NPC can do this, I mean about 95% of the NPCs you can come across. There is a huge variety in how you handle every single person you can talk to, and the fights you can have with them and the items you can glean from them are all really fun and useful. You can find late game equipment very early on in the game if you're willing to risk entreating that 2% chance. And if you want better odds, you're going to have to level up your influence, of which there are 3 kinds: power, wealth, and fame. All of them will increase naturally as you complete the main story and side quests. Specifically, having a high power influence does an easier job recruiting allies to your side, a higher wealth influence gives you better odds of purchasing hired help or by haggling items, and fame influence makes it easier for NPCs to just entreat their items to you for free or follow you for free. but you aren't forced to wait until your path actions have a 100% chance of success. You can just keep going for the low percentages until they work. The downside for this is in every single town in the game, you have a reputation number that starts at 5. Every single time you fail a percent chance for a path action, it goes down a number to 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Once you have 0 reputation, no one in that town wants to fuck with you. They all think you smell bad and aren't worth dealing with. In order to fix this and try again, you need to go to the tavern and bribe the tavern keep to spread good rumors about you. Which is really funny. Why does the bartender have that much power? Why can he make everyone in town forget that I tried to beat up an old lady for her dead husband's harpoon?
Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
Regardless, you don't actually have to wait to get stronger or get higher influence. You can keep going for it until you get it and are then wildly overpowered, which is a very, very fun feeling. And of course, this puts a question in the heart of every Octopath player. Are you going to save scum, reset your game every time you don't get that small 5% chance? Or are you going to heaven when you die? Either way, both options are very fun. It can be almost kind of funny in a cosmic way to fail an 80% chance 5 times in a row and have to bribe the tavern keep. That's happened to me more times than I care to admit. But it's also fun to just keep resetting until you get a really cool item that you shouldn't have access to yet. Regardless of which way you want to play, it's the Disco Elysium method. It's fun regardless of if you fail. The last main element of the game is the rebuilding of Wishvale. As I said earlier, you can get a ton of NPCs to move into Wishvale, and as you progress through the game, you'll be able to clear up more of the rubble, you'll be able to build more unique buildings, and eventually you'll turn Wishvale into something even better than it was before. But I will admit the town building is, in my opinion, the weakest part of the game. Because in order to progress the Wishvale storyline, it doesn't matter how you build, it just matters that you build. You need to have a certain amount of houses, you need to build a shop or a tavern, and as long as it's built, it doesn't matter what you do. All of the decorative pieces, all the trees and bushes you can plant, all the snowmen or billboards you can build, is all completely superfluous. It does not matter if you do that, and that kinda makes it a little boring. The only game I can think to compare this to is Dark Cloud, a PS2 game that also has town building as a major component, and in that game, not only did you have to build all the buildings, but every individual resident had something else they wanted you to do. You still had a lot of freedom in how you could make your town, but if you wanted to 100% the game, you would have to listen to everyone's requests. You would have to make sure that the fishing pond is near that guy's house. You would have to make sure that that guy is near that woman's shop. You have to make sure that this person's place is surrounded by water. It made you actually think about how you were building the town. Octopath Zero doesn't care about that, so you kind of just plop a few houses down and then move on with your life. And if you want to be really creative, at its maximum level, you can only put down 400 things, which sounds like a lot, but if you think about how every individual flower, every individual tree, every piece of a fence is its own item, you run out of that limit very quickly. So even for the creative minds that just want to build without really caring about whether or not it's required, they might run into some problems too. And that's about all I have to say about the gameplay and story of Octopath Zero. They are genuinely amazing, and while there are some complaints here and there, none of them are so grand that they hamper the experience. So the only thing left to talk about is art and music, and I, personally, love the HD 2D style. I love seeing all the sprites. I love how every single boss in the game does not fit what they look like on the map at all in any way.
For I am the one true ruler.
Roll up the sleeves.
Dead!
This enormous woman will devour us all!
I wholeheartedly love this art style. I understand that some people get turned off by it. I mean, sprites and pixels aren't for everyone, but personally, I think the locations look great. I think the characters look great. I love the art style that Team Asano has. If there is one thing I can say against it though, it's that Octopath, outside of its Kates and Octopuffs, don't really have memorable monster designs. Like, yeah, they look cool, but none of them are sticking with me like they would in Dragon Quest, where I can name Slimes, Kissers, Gigantes, like a bunch of monsters that I can vividly recognize, or Final Fantasy with things like Marlboros. I don't really think Octopath has that with its monster design. Its characters look great, and the monsters look good. I just can't really recall many of them after I finish a game. And music? I don't even need to comment on that. The Octopath Traveler soundtracks, all three of them, are phenomenal. Some of the best in Square Enix's library, and I am not pulling your leg when I say that. I know Square Enix, and Final Fantasy especially, have some of the best music in all of the business, and it's no different here. Octopath Traveler may be a AA game series, but if any part of it feels AAA, it is the music. Time and time again, they outdo themselves. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you haven't played this game yet, I hope what I've talked about here has made you interested in checking it out for yourself. And if you have played the game before, I hope you enjoyed hearing me gush about a game that we all enjoyed. I don't do game reviews very often, so I'm never really sure how well they turn out, but Octopath Zero just became my game of the year at the last second, and I really wanted to make a video gushing about it. So please, let me know in the comments how well you think this video works. I'm always open to feedback on these kind of things, and maybe I'll do more game reviews. Or not. I got about 37 other series that I never finished that I should go finish. Before this video ends, I would like to give a quick shout out to my patrons, whose constant support helped make this channel a bit more profitable, and thus help keep it going just that little bit more. My patrons include the likes of Across the Night, Adebayo Thompson, Alex Orliga, Amused Not Beating the Tails Allegations, Andrew Crockett, Bean Juice, Hell on Heelys, Jae Hyun, Despacito 2, Larmachi, Ly17 Bolt, Morga Lorgan, Played Arrow, Played is pronounced like the pattern, Ranger Man Sam, Sean Vossi, Shen Lu, Viri the Artist, Ya Girl Olwen, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Fire Emblem Lord, Ginger, Gugu Gaga, Cornelia Milkers 92, Inverse, Lev Maverick, Maple Knight, Sombret, and Upscale Furry Trash. Thank you all for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.